This is for iconic design. This is for luxurious comfort. This is for one-touch charging. This is for elegant beauty from all perspectives. This is for a new generation. This is for you. The all-electric EQA by Mercedes EQ.
천만 시민의 발인 버스는 시민의 이동을 책임지는 중요한 교통수단입니다. 안전이 최우선인 대중교통. 그러나 중앙 버스 전용 차로에서 무단횡단 등으로 인한 사고가 많이 발생하고 있습니다. 또한 운전자 부주의, 안전운행 불이행 등으로 시민의 안전이 위협받고 있습니다. 서울시는 차량과 모든 것을 연결하는 5G 커넥티드 기술로 교통사고를 획기적으로 줄여나가겠습니다. 도로상의 위험을 신속히 검지하여 차량 운전자에게 알려줄 수 있는 인공지능과 딥러닝 기술 등을 이용한 첨단 도로 인프라를 조성하였습니다. 버스 내부에는 커넥티드 서비스를 위해 올인원 단말기, 5G V2X 단말기, 버스 표출 장치, 졸음운전 감지기와 에이다스 등 첨단 장비가 설치됩니다. 세계에서 가장 앞선 기술이 집약된 5G 커넥티드 차량 시스템은 V2X 기반 초연결 기술, 정밀 지도와 5G 통신이 융합되어 있습니다. 차, 사람, 그리고 도로가 5G와 웨이브로 연결되어 시민의 안전과 편의를 위한 서비스를 제공합니다. 운전자 사각지대의 보행자를 미리 검지하여 보행자와 운전자 모두가 안전한 도로 환경을 제공합니다. 갑작스런 차선 이탈 시 운전자와 주변 차량에 알려주어 추돌 사고 및 난폭 운전을 예방합니다. 포트홀을 사전에 검지하고 관리하여 차량 안전을 확보하고 교통사고를 예방합니다. 도로공사 정보를 제공하여 차로 우회를 유도하고 도로 혼잡을 최소화하며 사고를 미연에 방지합니다. 5G 통신망을 통해 보행자와 자전거 위치 정보를 교환하여 사람과 차량의 교통사고를 사전에 예방합니다. 또한 시민의 편리한 버스 이용을 위해 승차 예약 및 하차벨 서비스를 도입하였습니다. 정밀 도로지도 기반의 주행 환경 인지 및 분석을 통해 지도갱신과 운행 상황을 반영합니다. 에이다스는 도로 영상 분석을 통해 도로 변화 정보를 검지하여 센터로 전송합니다. 전송된 도로 변화 정보는 자율주행 등을 위한 정밀 도로지도 갱신과 도로 시설물 유지 관리에 활용됩니다. 서울시는 초연결 커넥티드 서비스로 교통사고 제로를 넘어 자율주행 등 미래교통을 선도하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
안녕하십니까?
Good morning, everyone. This is 2021 Seoul Smart Mobility Expo. This is Thematic Session 5. And this session is about full self-driving. And I am your moderator, Professor 선우 명호 at Korea University. Great to see you all.
오늘 이른 아침부터
Thank you for coming to take part in this session at this early morning, and we also have many online participants. I sincerely welcome everyone.
우리 세션에서 가장
And during this session, we have three discussants. Thank you for your participation. These three discussants are leading not only Korea but also the world industry of autonomous vehicle. Let me introduce them first. First, we have Vice President Choi Seo-ho of Hyundai Motor Group. Please welcome him with a big hand.
두 번째는
And we have Mr. and Director Hong Dae-gon from Mando. He's responsible for ADAS development.
자율주행에서 빼놓을 수 없는
And communications is the key to autonomous driving. And we have Director Kang Jong-ho of LG U+.
오늘 주제별 세션은
And this session, throughout the first 15 minutes, I'd like to give you a brief background where we stand and what is the biggest challenge. And after that, we have a 45-minute long in-depth discussion. We actually gathered the questions in advance, and we selected some most relevant questions out of many, and we asked the questions to the experts who are sitting in the front. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, I am Professor 선우 명호 at Korea University, and my presentation is about the status of autonomous driving and what is the biggest challenges to develop the autonomous driving and
실현 및 상용화는 언제쯤
when it will be available and what is the biggest difficulties to make it available soon. Let me begin with the background of autonomous vehicle.
차량 등록 대수가 9억 대가 좀 넘습니다.
There are more than 9 million automobiles registered around the world, and the vehicles has become our daily lives. So 900 million automobiles have traveled here and there, and they sometimes mired in accidents. And car accidents killed 1.3 million people around the world. It also caused a lot of physical and property damages. But when we are having some over the investigation, that accident is not about the vehicle itself, but about some mistakes of the drivers. So many countries around the world try to make automobiles smarter to save the life and asset and properties.
그러면 지금부터는 세계
Then now I'd like to share you with some status of the automobile development. First, Waymo, developed by Google. For the autonomous taxi driving business, they have been in the business for 3 years in United States, and Amazon is specialized in logistics, so they have developed logistics specialized vehicles. They have made a huge investment into it. And the very recent one is there is a company globally renowned named Aptiv, and Aptiv built a joint venture named Nautical with the Hyundai Motor Group. And Tesla has been in the autonomous driving and autonomous technology for quite a long ago. Other than that, there are so many companies and people and startups, venture capitalists have joined the ranks. And let's watch the video first.
Parent company Alphabet announced a new business called Waymo, which stands for a new way forward in mobility. Instead of building its own cars with wheels and pedals, like the cute bubble prototype, Waymo will install technology in third-party vehicles. Waymo's mission is to make it safe and easy for people and things to move around. So maybe this hints at more long-haul autonomous driving. CEO John Krafchick also revealed that they had their first fully driverless car roaming around Austin, Texas in 2015. No pedals, no wheel, driving around in everyday traffic. Steve Mahan, a blind man, took the first ride in the fully autonomous car. It's the biggest indicator yet.
지금 잠깐 보여드린 비디오에서
So the video that I showed you, Google, from 5 years ago, developed a small car named Firefly.
자동차를 만들어서 테스트를
They developed it and they run the test.
운전대가 없고요.
And they do not have a wheel, a steering wheel, and no accelerator. Inside the car, there is only a bonnet. So if they just type in their final destination, that it autonomously take that people to their final destination. So in 2019, Google
애리조나로 옮겼습니다. 그래서
relocated the headquarters of this company to Arizona. And in the state of Arizona, they have been operating the robot taxi services there.
그러면 이런 자율주행에 관련된 것은
Then related to the autonomous driving, people around the world have paid attention to that, and it's key to the fourth industrial revolution. Accordingly, the Korean government have made a huge investment into it, and the Seoul city government also understand the importance of autonomous driving. So from 2019, the Seoul city have carried out some demonstration project. And as a result of that project, they have shown the autonomous driving, in particular autonomous parking. And 200 general citizens have participated in the test. And that car was developed by ASLET and A1 and LG U+. Let's have another video. LG U+ and Hanyang University joined their hands to establish Contramix, and they succeeded to have demonstration driving. Since they launched 5G autonomous driving, they made another leap forward. When they are having this actually this is the world first demonstration. 5G-based autonomous driving it's like a valet parking service. If the driver is taking off at the entrance of the building, then the vehicle itself will find the empty lot in the parking and just park themselves. And these technologies can be realized by their mobile application. And drivers can take off the car, then they can check the lot in the parking space through the app. If they touch it, then you can have the autonomous valet parking services seamlessly. It even considers some parking lot that is that is a little far, because it has navigation system as well. And that has been well demonstrated in this project. In the middle of the autonomous driving, the car have passed 5 crossroads, and one of them is in the complicated environment. The vehicles are communicating with the signals to decide whether to stop or go. Because when vehicles are passing by the subway stations, there are a lot of cars are unexpectedly stopped. Riders and raiders are recognizing the environment by using their sensors, and that information are sent to the driver's board to make a decision. The entrance is very narrow compared to the vehicle. Most of the parking lot recognize the plate automatically, and the width is not that wider for that purpose. And the vehicle of this car is large-sized SUV, but it naturally passed through that entrance. The highlight of today's demonstration is parking, and it just started parking. It moves forward and backward very smoothly. Very quickly, it finished the parking. If it has been done by a general citizen, he or she might move around multiple times more, but they completed the parking in just one try. As soon as they completed the parking, the driver can check it on their mobile application. So you don't need to worry about parking anymore. As you have seen from the video, LG U+ and many other companies have successfully demonstrated the autonomous driving and autonomous parking. Then what is the hurdles and the challenges before the autonomous driving? Unfortunately, Waymo or Tesla, who are known to be the leader of autonomous vehicle, have frequently engaged in accidents. This is another case of the accident of a robotaxi of Waymo. Of course, it is largely by the mistakes of that car, but sometimes that occurred by the other cars. But just 2 months ago, Houston, Texas had an accident with a Model X that Tesla car have to burn down. That is where we are standing at with autonomous driving. Let me just try to show you another video which describes why we have to have this kind of challenges. We had another test drive around the Ki-heung Highway toll area. It describes why it's so difficult. Actually, this environment is really complicated. Once you pass through the toll, you face roundabout on your right side. But the roundabout have some inflow of the vehicles from 5 different directions. And there is a priority to get into the roundabout, but people ignore that. They just try to be the first to get into that roundabout. To control everything correctly in that situation is not easy. I just played this video to Google and Tesla, and experts there said that it is really, really difficult. More than anything else, the vehicle should recognize the lanes, and they have to recognize the color and the letters on the signals and the board. That's why the vehicles are having a lot of cameras. But reading the color means that it largely depends on the weather condition of the day. So the camera should perform better. To correct that error, very recently, the board and the signal should be based on communications, not the visual the indications. So KT, SKT, or some LG U+ have applied their technology to autonomous driving. Once we combine the autonomous vehicle with communications, then the accuracy will be enhanced for the reading the signals. Then we can reduce the accident rate. And also, we have seen in the video, but in real time, we can send the traffic and the road environment conditions to the vehicle in real time. Then the driver or people who are using the autonomous vehicle can spend their time behind the wheels while watching this kind of content. Now, I'd like to have some discussions with experts. We received a lot of questions from the participants, so I just selected some relevant questions. We have Vice President Choi So-ho from Hyundai and Hong Dae-gun from Mando and Kang Jong-ho from LG U+. Please give them another round of applause first. And actually, the design, Mr. Hong Dae-gun is responsible for the design of autonomous driving car, in particular ADAS of Mando. And actually, Mr. Kang Jong-ho is responsible for the smart city at the LG U+, and I want to introduce them one more time. Out of many questions we have received, many are about when will it be possible, and the second is if the autonomous driving is safer than human driving, and who gonna guarantee the safety? And the third most frequently asked question is if there is any malfunction in the sensor and communications, how can you guarantee and secure the protection safety? And depending on the weather or road environment, some sensors or radar might not working well. Then how can we resolve that? And what is the biggest hurdle to achieve full autonomous driving? And as we experienced recently, because of the short supply of the chip, development of autonomous vehicle have been delayed. So the chips and sensors for the autonomous driving, we clearly have to have some roadmap and the plan. So that's another important question. Last but not least, what is the biggest expectation and benefit we can get from the full autonomous driving? So let's have a discussion with experts.
첫 번째 질문이 되겠습니다.
The first question is, when do you expect that we can realize the commercialization of full autonomous driving?
안녕하십니까. 현대자동차의
Good morning.
혁신기술 사업 추진실장입니다. 아까 단장으로
I am the director of the commercialization of autonomous driving department from Hyundai Motor Group. The first question is about the commercialization of full autonomous driving. I would see this in two aspects. The first aspect is the commercialization of technology, and the second one is the legal and social acceptance of autonomous driving. The second aspect puts questions. Then what would come first, whether it would be the technology or the legal framework? And I think those two go hand in hand. And what would be the criteria to define the autonomous driving? When we look at the bus or taxis or cars, is it the time that we make all these into a autonomous driving, or is it the time when we apply the technology to gradually in a limited area like smart city? I think we have developed technology to some degree, but actually applying it in the real world is difficult. The safety matters in a particular area, and in particular the highway or the arterial roads. It's very difficult to run this autonomous driving. We have to reduce the risks and the accidents of autonomous driving in those areas. When it comes to the legislation, when there are some accidents caused by an intentional mistake, intentional wrongdoings or mistakes, the law applies differently. So we also think about the liability and on the side of companies when an autonomous car causes an accident. So to which extent a company should be responsible for it? Is it the responsibility of a manufacturer or the driver or the car owner? So we need to think about the criteria first. Thank you very much. So how can we accept socially, and how can you accommodate the autonomous driving in terms of legislation? So that's what Mr. Choi said. And now I would like to turn to Mr. Hong. The time for commercialization of full autonomous driving was the question. So how can we apply the definition of full driving matters at the moment? When we look at the current status of autonomous driving technology, I think there are two dimensions, roughly. The first one is to scale up the technology of autonomous driving and enhance the ODD to enhance the function of auto driving. The betterment of function is to apply the autonomous car to determine the different streets or make a decision to make a left or right turn. So that is the functional area. Another area is to increase reliability of each function. As we go on enhancing functionality, then that will give driver or the owner of the car more comfortable with autonomous driving. In terms of reliability, we are talking about level 3 or level 4 or 5 of self-driving that was stipulated by SAE. We often talk about Tesla, and there are cars in terms of two aspects are focusing on increasing functionality. And they are using, in that sense, the term full self-driving. In terms of functionality, as we develop technology, users may be supplied with more diverse functionalities. In terms of reliability, when we think about the self-driving as far as level 4 self-driving, then we need to secure safety, very high level of safety, and I think it takes a very long time to achieve that level. Thank you. That was a very realistic opinion. Then what do you think, Mr. Kang? The SAE defines the level of self-driving, and according to their criteria, level 3 is the self-driving automation. It applies to only limited area that allows for the use of driving automation. And level 4 means high driving automation, and level 5 is full driving automation. And when do we expect to see the level 4 autonomous driving in Korea? It's uncertain. The Korean government is implementing the related project, and it funds the institute to develop the level 4 autonomous cars by 2027. But I think it's very difficult to arrive that level. And I think it will take maybe 10 years to commercialize that level of self-driving car. And when it comes to purchasing those cars, it will take a longer time than that. And in the aspect of legislation, the R&D is being conducted now. In testbed area, the relevant organizations are conducting tests. The Sejong City has designated the smart city in 5 zone, and it will continue by 2035. And in that area, self-driving vehicles will run there. And after 2021, I believe that we can see level 4, level 5 vehicles run and travel in that area. Now, out of 7 questions, this is the most important question. That is why I started with this question. If I add a little bit more, since I have worked for an auto company, what is most important thing is that, let's say, when we launch a level 5 self-driving car and have a legal framework for that, but in the industry, when the company sells a self-driving car, then the company should be able to make money. In the US, the self-driving is considered as an option. So one company asked the users about the possibility. The U.S. consumers want to avoid to paying the consumption tax. So when I give you concrete numbers, so how much would you pay for that service? And
그 레인지를
We gave them a range of $100 to $1,000. And the results of the survey was that
선택 사양의 가격을 5,000불로 얘기했습니다.
the most the
600만 원
the people said $500 for that subscription of the self-driving option. So in a specific area like Sangam Zone or in a smart city in Sejong City, we will see an advanced self-driving cars faster than other areas, but I don't think it's very easy job to see in other areas to see that self-driving cars. John Kraft said he was the president of the Hyundai Asia, and 5 months ago he resigned. Why?
엄청나게 많이 쓰고 있어요. 그 조 단위를 쓰는데
The business unit spends a lot of money in trillions of wons, but
엄청 셉니다. 그래서 이런 것들이 아마
he got a lot of pressure in achieving his goals. So that is the current situation in developing self-driving cars.
사람이 운전하는 것보다 안전한지
The next question is how safe the self-driving car?
이쪽에 뭐 설계
Is it safer than a person drives a car? So this question goes to Mr.
사람이 운전하는 것보다 안전한가라는
Kang Choi.
사람이 운전하는 것보다 안전하게
The self-driving car is safer than the driving by human? That was the question. I think we have to make that happen. From 2010, we started the commercialization of the self-cars of level 1 and level 2. When it comes to AV function, when the car in front of my car has an emergency braking,
들어가는 게 더 빠르다라는 연구 결과가 있고요.
then
그래서 그런 연구 결과가
research found that
스탠다드 장착이 되고 있습니다. 현재 자동차.
the car,
보통 이제 자율주행 같은
the
경우는
car's
사람의
decision to make an instant decision to have a braking is better than humans. So that was now a important function that should be mandatorily equipped in a car.
그래서 자율주행 개발에
When we developed self-driving technology, and when there was a time for the booming in developing in self-driving cars, the part companies and startup companies used deep learning
값을 가지고 최종
to use the sensors values
조향을 하는
to
전체를 엔드-투-엔드로 딥러닝을 통해서 능숙
analyze the human's behavior of using emergency braking. And
근데 이제
they are developing that technology. But now the situation is different
괜찮은 방법이 아니었던 게
because that was not a good approach. In a real driving situation, deep learning can be used to train the computing system, but in an emergency situation,
했는지에 대한 데이터 취득이 거의 불가능했다고 볼 수.
when the situation occurs that have to use the emergency braking, it's very hard to collect that kind of data to train the AI. So now we are changing our approach in using AI. So how can we make a decision and how can we apply our decision to the driving tasks? So we have divided that kind of functions to develop the self-driving technologies.
핵심은 안전입니다. 현재
The core of autonomous driving is safety.
상태가 안전하냐 안 하냐.
Is it safe or not?
어떤 환경은 뭐냐.
And what is the environment that deteriorates safety?
정상적으로 들어오고 있냐 아니냐.
And whether the information or data is received to the computing system. So all these are very important issues. And the most important thing is whether the car recognized the situation correctly.
정상이라고 아닌 걸 판단하면 자율주행을 서비스를 제공을 중단하는 형태.
We have to stop the autonomous driving when the car does not function properly in determining the situation. And that is what we decided. The autonomous driving should be developed that guarantees the safety, and that is the most important thing.
Thank you. Do you want to make some comment or anything to add? Let me add one thing. Mr. Choi So-ho, 5 years ago, he participated at the CES in Las Vegas. He demonstrated the autonomous driving. He was responsible for that project, so he has a lot of experiences. And Mr. Hong Dae-gon is working at Mando, which is considered to have the world's best technologies, in particular ADAS. So when it comes to safety, level 2 driving, the level 2 autonomous driving, which has been commercialized, is safer than human driver, in particular collision prevention and drowsy driving. So it is actually very effective to reduce the accident and prevent the accident at the level 2 status. But we have to consider when the autonomous driving technology is aiding the drivers and it is full driving. If it assists the driver, then they just prevent the accident. And then we are happy with that. But if we are going with the full, the autonomous driving, then we have to prevent the full accident. About 1.3 million people died because of accident, and more than 90% are caused by the driver's mistakes. Then to prevent such kind of cases in the first place, then the software that we are having should reduce the number of deaths to a tenth. That we have to, I think that's a very important question. If we reduce that to a tenth of the existing deaths, but still that is problematic to the to people. You know, we had similar experiences in the United States. They had the autonomous driving demonstration back there. And actually, I was working for developing the hydrogen the vehicle. Back then, the key priority was that the safety. If any accident occurred because of the hydrogen gas, then all the development might be suspended for all. You know, there was some other technology development which has a little bit of a hydrogen, and that was mired in accident. The accident was not caused by hydrogen gas, but because of that accident, hydrogen development was stopped at all. So we have to make very safe about this technology. Then how are we going to evaluate and judge how safe it is? UAM team, at the very beginning, I tried to build a team, and there were not many the UAM experts in Korea, so I tried to recruit experts around the world. And what I learned from that is that when it comes to software and design of the aircraft, they have a very strict process of certification. You have to get through every steps of certification very thoroughly. But there is totally different situation to automobile. But unlike automobile, the aircraft is having very strict certification before to produce that product. So just like FAA, we have to have some certification, standardized certification, just like aircraft around the world. I think that will be very helpful. First and second questions are very important. Let me add one comment. If the autonomous driving is safer than human being, I believe that definitely is. Then some people tweak the question. Then there is Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, who are the best drivers in the world, then if the autonomous driving car is safer than the cars driven by these kind of experts, we cannot say yes to that question. But I can share one data because we have many online participants. So this is the data released by Tesla. Tesla use a lot of cameras with radars. So while driving the Tesla's car, they get a lot of data. And we can tap on the data
오토 인슈런스 자동차 보험회사에게 제공을 합니다. 그러면
and provide it to the auto insurance company. Then Tesla's consumers,
모든 데이터를
Tesla can analyze the driving patterns and the behavior of drivers. And in general, when people drive a car for 10 years, then
2대 정도가 사고 났다는데
2 cars out of 100 of Tesla car had an accident, which is way low than the 12 of the average other car. So if a person is having full driver's package of Tesla, then
보험에 보험료를 적용을 합니다.
they can get a lot of premium discount based on this data. To the interest of time, I'd like to move to the next question.
자, 자율주행 완전 핵심인 센서하고 소프트웨어 문제.
The key to autonomous driving is sensors and software. And how can you overcome the issues caused by the communications problem? Mr. Kang, you can give an answer. You talked about Tesla. Tesla said we're gonna solely depend on cameras to have autonomous driving. Tesla, but still using the LiDAR, so that makes some controversy. But the cars run on cameras, and the car run on camera and radar. I prefer the second one with the radar as well. We have to trust the reliability of the car. Then I want to have a safer car. I want to have the vehicle that has many redundancies. So the key to the autonomous driving is redundancy. So many cameras and many radar, many sensors are having redundancy. Of course, the communications are redundancy. Last October, the government of Korea announced the smart mobility plan, and they said sensor-oriented vehicle, and the second is connected-based autonomous vehicle driving. I think sensors are having a lot of technical limitations because the sensors are hardware. So if it faces a bad weather condition, then they can malfunction. And the LiDAR is very fragile to the vibrations, so it wears and tears. So all the equipment are highly related to the road infrastructure and some, many other external conditions. That's one thing we have to consider. The second thing is that all the software and the devices help us to get the data, but the autonomous driving should have a most conservative algorithm. So if anything is abnormal, then the car autonomously park at the shoulder of the road, and so there is also the service center. So the service center remotely control and see the status of the car. So that's another way to secure the safety. Thank you for your answer. Mr. Hong, do you want to add something? Mr. Kang covers that question pretty well, and he touched on the most important part. Actually, the key to the safety is the sensors and the backup solution or backup solutions of communications. The redundancy is the only way. Sensors, software, communications should have a redundancy. So if there is if one is failure, then the other backup should support that, should play the role. I think that's the best way. to secure the reliability at the infant stage. And the redundancy of sensors also need to consider many different types of equipment. At the row level, we have to fuse all different devices to secure the best safety. And so we still need to decide whether the redundancy occurred at the low level or high level. For example, Mobileye, another tech company in the autonomous driving, they are talking about the sheer redundancy. The camera only can't complete the autonomous driving, and the radar only complete another technology of autonomous driving, and then these two should combine together to achieve level 4 autonomous driving. That's a new concept emerging. So if still there is a fail, then we have to have a minimal. Then if there is still manual, then we have to have some manual to stop the operation of that driving. As Mr. Kang mentioned, if there is any abnormality was detected from a car, then the car autonomously stopped at the shoulder, things like that. Then we can just have that kind of procedures as until we achieve full autonomous driving. Mr. Che, you would like to make a comment? Otherwise, we're going to move to the next question. It's in the same context. If autonomous driving vehicle faces abnormal and bad weather condition or poor road infrastructure, how that car respond to that situation? So who's going to start first? Okay, Mr. Kang. The areas with poor infrastructure or when weather conditions are poor, it's very tricky situation. There are a lot of technologies out there. The key technology, out of many technologies, what I recently studying is the one that have not been accepted by autonomous driving. LiDAR is using the speed of the light. But there is a similar technology. If I send some signals to the device, and then the devices send me back that waves, then there is a technology named UWB to measure the time. And Apple are applying the UWG chip on their devices. It's not for the long distance, but it can cover 50 meters to 100 meters. So device-to-device communications is possible to measure the distance. So RF chips is very cheap. So I think these kind of technology can be developed a little further and applied to the automobile, then this scenario can be possible. If you have devices that has UWB, and when a car is passing by, then if that car is passing, then your device is sending the wave, and the wave can see the corner of the car, then the car recognizes that there is some object that is approaching to the vehicle, so I need to reduce the speed. And UWB is free from the weather condition, and UWB also help vehicles to understand the distance from the other cars as well. So it's another technology to enhance the safety of the autonomous vehicle. Thank you for the answer. Mr. Hong, do you want to add more? Well, I think my answer may be very similar to the previous answer that I gave. As Mr. Che mentioned, new sensors should be developed and they should be secured as a redundancy to enhance the safety. I totally agree with that. And Mr. Kang? Well, Seoul City and the Korean government consider autonomous driving as a future growth engine, so they are very enthusiastic about it. When it comes to the road infrastructure, Korea is the most innovative. So the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure announced that by 2025, we will have a road infrastructure to have autonomous driving. So the so-called CITS infrastructure will be built across the country, and the leadership is taken by the Seoul city. If that happens, the road infrastructure can support autonomous driving vehicles, so all the environment will become very favorable for the autonomous driving. So everything's are combined, then we can bring the time of commercialization forward.
Thank you. Now we have 13 minutes left. I'm going to speed up a little bit.
완전 자율주행 실현의 가장 큰 걸림돌은 뭐라고 생각하세요?
What would be the biggest hurdles in realizing the full driving, in full autonomous driving? I'll give you 1 minute. Mr. Ho, please. Rather than a hurdle, I think it's a barrier to entrance is the securing safety. To have a good safety level, we need to have redundancy and development of software and great number of tests and test criteria and the collection of data are required to have secure. And first, we have to set standards, and then we have to secure safety. Thank you. Mr. Hong, please. Likewise, the biggest hurdle is the safety issue. Recently, as you have seen in the news, Level 3 autonomous car investment is very huge. And a European premium OEMV company, which put a lot of investment in it, and it announced that it will not release its car unless it has complete safety. And AP companies level 4 safety autonomous driving car will not be released because of the safety issues. So that means that component and part companies regard safety is the biggest issue. It is a little bit different from the other Waymo-like companies. When they release their product, safety comes first. So they are approaching conservatively to this issue. We talked about sensors or mapping or infrastructure. And how can we converge all this to secure enough safety level? That is an important issue. If we overcome the current issues, I think we can commercialize full autonomous driving. Mr. Kang? That was a good comment, and I took a different approach. There are a lot of regulations on autonomous driving. In order to deregulate the autonomous driving, they are working hard, and they introduced the test bed that are regulation-free. So the citizens can test their autonomous driving, and the autonomous driving technology is applied to cleaning cars. And a lot of companies are there to test their technology. And we are running a big data business that are using the data collected from those companies. Basically, we don't want to repeat the same mistakes that are seen there. So the data there is very important. So the problem is that the companies there do not want to share their data because that data is very precious. So I ask and I hope that those companies share their test data together. It's my thought, and there are audience here and the online audience there who access this conference. So I want to explain more to avoid any misunderstanding. Waymo and Amazon have their autonomous driving cars, and you might think that they are very good at, but why the auto industry is slow compared to Amazon or Waymo? And Waymo and Amazon are different from car manufacturers. They are trying to increase revenues. They do not want to stop their cars, so they want to run their cars 24/7. So whenever, wherever, they should be able to provide a mobility service to users. In order to do that, because the running one vehicle can give them a lot of profits. So the cost of one car is little in their eyes. But for general users, they do not want to spend like $1 million to purchase a autonomous driving car. But these companies can invest $300 million to purchase one autonomous driving car. Some companies who want to run autonomous cars, they have different interests from the other government agencies or the car manufacturers. If you allow me, I want to talk about this. The semiconductor and the chips are very important. So the last question about that, with regard to autonomous driving, I want to give you just 1 minute. What do you do at Hyundai Motors? Mr. Che, please. For the past 1 year, among many sensors and chips, we etched the computer vision chips. The very expensive chips are used in the computer system, and Waymo used these expensive computer chips. So the question is how to cut the computer chips cost. As for the computer vision, we often use CNN. It is embedded with the vector. And how can we use the minimum level of power to operate the greatest amount of calculation? And that is the question that we are dealing with. I think it's possible to solve the current problems. So per 1 second, 250 times of calculations are possible now with some chips that are recently addressed, and another chip companies have their own design house or foundries, so they have good supply chains and the role divided amongst them. So I think we can create some good consortium with those partners. If the chips costs are lowered and the cameras costs are lowered, and I don't think we have good solution when it comes to LiDAR. But if we address all these issues, then manufacturers can apply the affordable sensors and chips. I think we can achieve the current goals. The Hyundai Motors is likely to produce its own chips for autonomous driving, and that was my question. But I'm sorry, I cannot answer to that question at the moment. Mr. Hong, you are interested in sensors. Do you have your own solution when it comes to sensors?
센서 쪽은 지금 저희가 레벨 2 자율주행에 들어가는 센서.
We have sensors for level 2 self-driving. We have already commercialized it.
차셔서 유저 매뉴얼을 읽어보시면
If you purchase the car and read the user's manual, and you will see a lot of information, usually the warning about the malfunctions. And that is related to the reliability issue. In order to enhance reliability, the high precision and high functionality of each part, such as sensors, are very important. The 4D image should be materialized, and we are considering the 8 megapixels and other high-resolution image are considered. And LiDAR, we are thinking about the short range for LiDAR. So we are studying the possibility of these solutions. And currently, the sensors are sophisticated. The real and computing load is very huge. The point cloud and for the 8-pixel camera video, so many things are occurring on point clouds. The cameras are recognize objects, and the deep learning is used to analyze the images. So all these information processing is centralized in computing system. That kind of centralized computing system process the sensor data for autonomous driving. The 300 TOPSLs and 500 TOPSLs semiconductor should be necessary to achieve that level of functionality. So that is the current condition of the sensors. So you don't mention about the sensor development possibility. Are you going to develop the communications chip on your own? LG does not have any plan to manufacture the communication chips. The highlight of this session is the last question. If we commercialize the full autonomous driving, what would be the biggest benefit of it? Mr. Kang, please. As you know, I believe the benefits, so I'll give you just 1 minute. We call apps and the cars are parking autonomously. I think so the shortened mobility time is one benefit. And we tested this. So during the mobility, the man in the car are watching a VR and a woman doing makeup. So the users in the self-driving car can have a leisure time inside the car. That is one benefit. Another thing is the precision mapping issue. So the current map does not precise enough to be used for self-driving, so we need to have more precise maps. When an ambulance is approaching toward me behind, the cars in the same line should make a change to a different lane. And that is a rule. And if the self-driving car can materialize that function, that will be beneficial for all our society. Thank you very much. These are the experts in the field. They have a lot to say. So, Mr. Hong, can you please make a wrap-up comment? I think you would agree. I hope and I wish the commercialization of self-driving car come fast. The Mondo's catchphrase is free mobility, and that includes the concept of safety. The free mobility can allow users to move around even if the users are drunken or tired. So if you are tired, you can use a self-driving car to go to the Busan and the southernmost area of the Korean Peninsula. That is one benefit of self-driving car. Mr. Choi, please. The Hyundai Motor Car has this vision, smart mobility solution provider. That is our vision. When it comes to mobility, we just not think about people's mobility. We also think about mobility of goods. During the pandemic, we are using the delivery services. And also the delivery of service, for example, the visiting hospital or visiting banking system, these are not available now, but if we commercialize a self-driving car with new technologies, I think the mobility of people, service, or goods can be possible at a lower cost. The taxi costs has 75% of labor cost. So if self-driving car is available in the future, then we will see more diverse services at a lower cost. This topic is very important, so it should have more time to discuss all these topics. But I thank you for your discussions. And additionally, I would mention this, as you have watched this in the video, the vulnerable group in terms of traffic, those who have vision handicap, they can use the benefit of self-driving. When we commercialize self-driving, I think we can prioritize these handicapped people, vulnerable group. So with this new technology, I think we can make our society better. And that can be a great vision with the introduction of self-driving cars. And I think we have to conclude this session. I want to thank all the audience who are here with us. I sincerely thank you for your attendance, and I thank you, all the presenters, and also the T-Money staff members. I thank you for your efforts. Let's conclude this session with a big round of applause. Thank you.